All right, so this is the koha-US general meeting. The first thing I'll ask for is if anybody has any announcements. We had a few weather announcements before the meeting started, but any koha related announcements anybody has? All right, I just saw an email that the Ramapoke group is going to be joining, is going to be migrating to Koha supported by Bywater. So that's another consortia that's joining. So that's cool. I know that one of the Alex, who is involved with that group, did attend the conference. So must have liked a little bit of what he saw. So that's good news that more and more people are joining.
Yep. Bob, where are they from?
This is New York.
Oh,
I think
okay.
upstate is my understanding. Don't know if the
I'll also pipe up and say the Yavapai Library Network, another consortium, we're moving from Symphony to Koha soon.
Yes, and that's right, because you've been on Aspen for a bit. So you got a taste of the open source life and liked it.
Well, I used to work in Silicon Valley, so I know open source quite well.
Excellent. Well, that's great news as well. I hope you'll come to the consortium SIGs now that I've got the the dates correct. Now that we're not scheduled on Thanksgiving anymore. All right. So for those of you that just joined, we were just doing a couple announcements. Nate sounds like there's some more business, some more consortia signed up.
Yes. We have a bunch of new partners joining us. Chanel, actually, from
she was saying that. I was talking about Ramapoke as well.
Yeah, they're coming. It's not official yet.
Okay. I feel good about it because he sent out an email that they've made a decision. So
yes, awesome, cool. Heard it from them. Cool. Also, I don't know if y'all saw the announcement that PTFS Europe, we've invested in that organization. Bywater has, and myself and Brendan are two directors on that board now. So we comprise a minority share of that organization. So there's a lot of consolidation in this market. So I want to address that. This is not consolidation. We are two separate entities that are completely autonomous. PTFS Europe holds all the reins. Like I said, Bywater is the minority owner. We invested in them just to kind of strengthen their organization. They had two original owners that were ready for retirement. So we stepped in and kind of avoided them having to go to a public bid or VC or anything like that. We really just did it to strengthen the community and, just kind of see where we can help with their organization. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is a big announcement. I'm curious if anybody has any questions for Nate since he brought that up.
Yeah, we're open. Just let me know if you have questions. I'll be happy to answer them.
I know because I just from talking to developers and stuff that you've already talked about putting some development over their direction. Can you address what that might look like if this changes what your plans were already for that?
Definitely. So yeah, we already kind of fund a developer in their company to kind of help out with stuff that we throw their way. But this is going to be really a capacity increase for us. It's going to be a little while before we actually see the fruits of this, but the idea is that the UK doesn't have as many libraries as the US, right? So growth is a little bit more difficult in the UK because of that fact. So development is a way that we can help grow this company. And I know that there's a lot of organizations here in the US that want quicker development. There's a lot of big institutions who have earmarked funding every year for development, and they just really don't want to pay it because they don't like the lag time. And they know that our focus is support and that our developers are going to be doing service and support first and foremost. So they're a little hesitant to be like, all right, here's a bunch of money, develop a bunch of stuff. Whereas now we can say we have a house that, we work very closely with. Every year, our developers are going to be getting together, either here or overseas, to make sure that that kind of coordination and that partnership and collaboration is as tight as we can make it, while still allowing us to sign off on each other's bugs. Because again, we are two separate organizations, so that should not affect that. So it'll really kind of help increase the capacity of development for our organization, and it'll help fast track, the features that we're looking at in Koha. I know that they're going to be working on a big ILL, Koha to Koha ILL development, if they sign a big tender that they've been working on. So that'll be cool for us. You can have individual instances and then connect seamlessly. For those libraries who want to be a consortium, but don't want to be a consortium, that's perfect for them. A very hot ticket item for us is an acquisitions 2.0 development. We feel as though the more larger institutions that utilize Koha, the more acquisitions is being used. And it's one of the weak points of the software. So we're going to be putting a lot of effort and a lot of resources into making acquisitions more granular, particularly for consortia. So there's more separation between budgets and funds and all this kind of stuff. So I know a lot of our larger organizations are very, very interested in that, and it'll move the product forward. And we're already working on the ERM with them. So some big ticket items, and the ERM is well on its way. So stay tuned on that one. I mean, it's already got a working concept. It's just, I think some bits and pieces need to be finalized and tweaked as more people use it. More bits and pieces will show themselves, I'm sure. So yeah.
Right. Thanks. Anybody have any other questions for Nate on this one?
It's also redundancy for our two organizations. If we get into a bind and we need some help with anything, they can help us, and vice versa, without having to worry about paperwork. So another big bonus.
I don't have any questions. I just want to say congratulations, and sounds pretty cool.
Awesome. Thanks.
Excellent. So let's move on to new business.
I have a quick question.
Oh, please, George.
Could somebody repost a link to the agenda? I got here late, and I know several other people did. And so I don't see a link in the chat box.
It's not a extensive agenda, but yeah, we can definitely do that. I could very quickly read to you the agenda items. One is conference recap. So conference is so yes, we successfully completed our conference in Portsmouth. Many of you in this meeting were there in person or online. So that was fantastic. I think we had a little debrief at the recent board meeting last week, and I think we all agreed it was a real success. We had the most registrants we've ever had. We had the most in-person attendance we ever had. And so things went really well. Looking at some of the feedback we've gotten from the survey that we put out, it's largely been positive. Obviously, there's always those things about location and, some, it was at about an hour away from an airport. And that was a concern for some people, which is understandable because the bus station wasn't located right next to the hotels, things like that. So that was a factor. The other thing I think we saw was restaurants weren't located right next to the library where we had the event, so that made lunch a little tight a couple of those days. So those are all things that were the feedback that we're taking into our conference committee, which will be meeting right after this. So if anybody wants to get involved in the conference committee and help plan next year's conference, definitely hang out after this meeting, and we will be getting into that and starting to talk about next year's conference. Speaking of which, and I don't have the link handy right away, but I will get that real soon. We are open for proposals for next year. So I'm copying that over so I can link that in the meeting. Please consider submitting. As I can see right now, we don't have any submissions as of yet for the conference, but the way we do our conference is that we get proposals from members of the Koha community, and then if we have multiple ones, we vote on them. So ultimately, it is the membership that decides where our conference is. George, I saw you on mute.
I just wanted to say, if there's anybody here that wasn't happy with the fact that it was an hour to the nearest airport, and you live like 5 minutes from a nearby airport, this is an excellent opportunity for you to say, I'd like to host next year.
Yeah, absolutely. If you have those. So we have some, you'll see if you look through that forum, you can kind of get a sense for what we're kind of looking for. We have some basic technical requirements, nothing too crazy, but the abilities for us to be able to do that dual conference, so we can continue to have an online component. Relative proximity to an airport doesn't have to be 5 minutes. Relative proximity between the venue and hotels and restaurants and things like that. Those are the type of things that we're looking for. And then a capacity, we had about 70 people in person this year. Almost everybody that signed up showed up, which was really awesome. It was a really high percentage of that. So that was really cool. So we need to, as more libraries are joining, we need to have a venue that can hold probably at least 85, something in there, because we could see some growth in the amount of people that want to attend in person. So those are just a few things to consider with that. And I've heard this a few times from some people I've talked to, that if it's on since we just had one on the East Coast, that maybe it should be elsewhere. Again, our process is that the membership decides that. So right now, with no submissions, I'd be excited to have a submission from anywhere in the United States, and then we can go from there. So I wouldn't dismiss any particular location as an option, because we've had it out east. It is obviously nice to move around and do different parts of the country, but it is not a requirement by any means.
In the first conference was in Washington, the second one was in Pennsylvania, and then all of them for the next several years were west of the Continental Divide. So, and then when we did get east of the Continental Divide, it was in Pueblo, Colorado. So I don't mind the fact that we've had Lawrence and Texas and now New Hampshire. I think it's just great for anybody to say, come do it here. We want to do it here. So, and it doesn't matter to me where you are. When I said to Ben he should do it in Fargo, and he said January, I'm a little hesitant about Fargo in January, but it'd just be awesome to go anywhere. And I've talked about how, it was a lot of work to do it here in Lawrence, but it was very worthwhile. So don't be afraid of proposing your location. So.
And our president has joined us. Christopher, we've just been kind of doing a little conference recap and talking about site submissions for next year. So that's basically where we're at. The one thing I didn't add that I should add as part of the recap is I thought the sessions were really great. I really enjoyed the content and felt that there was a high level of engagement with attendees, which was exciting to see.
Awesome. Well, thank you for covering while I was getting out of a traffic jam. So I appreciate you taking care of that. I'm sorry I missed the beginning of this conversation here. All right. Feel free to. What happened? Oh, there we go. Everything disappeared for a second. Feel free to continue the conversation. I'm just pulling up the agenda right now, so give me just a moment here.
I did share the evaluation was done on SurveyMonkey, and the results are in that link that I posted in the chat box. The only thing that's not, that you can't see through that link, are the responses to questions about individual topics. There was a section in the survey where people could say specifically, you know, the presentation that Christopher and I did, they could leave specific comments on that, on individual pieces of the conference, and those aren't available through that link, but everything else is, all the good stuff, all the bad stuff. So, and it was mostly good. You know, the complaints, like Bob said, were almost all just, you know, too far from the airport. It was hard to get to and from lunch because the library was so far away from the business district and things like that. So there was hardly anything bad to be said about the actual content of the conference.
Right. Yeah. One of the things that I'm hoping that the committee for this next conference can look at is maybe shortening the day a little bit and giving a little bit more time for lunch breaks with consideration of distance. I think we need to, you know, evaluate those situations a little bit more. You know, how far is the venue from actual places to eat for lunch, and give an appropriate amount of time during the lunch break for that. But no, I feel like this year our content was spot on and really well packed. You know, just halfway through the first day, I was blown away by how much we had done that far, and it was like, wow, we're still going. There's a lot more to go, and I really enjoyed the conference. So I think it was well done, and we couldn't have done it without everybody that coordinated the conference, but also the people that attended and presented.
Yeah, speaking of the first day, sorry to be late. We had to take the cat to the vet. Did anyone else find the first day really, really exhausting? I know a lot of people I talked to felt overwhelmed, in a good way. I enjoyed it, but it really did take a lot of energy out of me.
There was a lot of content. I think part of what contributed towards that was we had a lot of shorter presentations that might have contributed to that.
I felt exhausted, but I think it was because my flight got delayed and rerouted, and I didn't get into my bed and breakfast until after midnight. So
Understandable.
yeah, I don't think it was the conference that exhausted me. I think it was the day of traveling and sitting in the airport. Although sitting in the airport did give me enough time to finish the presentation that Christopher and I did.
Some of the online attendees mentioned they had some difficulties with the audio, and as a board, we discussed a little bit that last week. And one of the challenges with, somebody had recommended getting audio equipment, and one of the challenges with that is that we don't really have a place to store things like that, and so that's something that we may have to think about if that's possible or not.
Yeah, it's challenging enough as it is with the supplies that we transfer from year to year. I think adding audio equipment to that would become a little bit of a financial burden on us if we had to do that. I think for the most part, you know, it is what it is. I mean, if you know, we're a nonprofit, and if we're going to try to accommodate hybrid, you know, we do what we can, but I don't think that we can, you know, meet the same standards as conferences that, you know, spend or actually charge a ton of money for you to attend. So, you know, I think there's some give and take with, you know, who we are, you know, what we ask of everybody, and what we can provide technically. I think we have some good plans in place, and Jason laid out an excellent flow chart that, you know, I was nervous because I hadn't walked through it before, but having walked through it this year, it's like, wow, okay, this really helped a lot. And you know, the people that helped pull all of this off really made it work. Yeah, the audio was not as great as we would want, but, you know, if we can at least, you know, if we can at least do what we did, I think we're okay. But, you know, if we can tap into that audio, that would be preferable than trying to pull audio over a microphone in the room to pick up what's being done over the microphones. I think that would be better. You know, that's always the best case scenario, but, you know, we don't always get that option. So. Any other comments about the conference? I am still chipping away at separating out those videos. I've got a good chunk of it done. I'm on the third day, and those are going a little bit faster, but I've had a few days where I've had to be off work. So I'm gonna be getting back on that this week, hopefully, to get that wrapped up. I'm hoping by the end of this week we'll get the rest of those separated out, but that's going fairly well now that I've got a routine in hand for that. So I'll continue to chip away as time allows. All right. Unless there's any other comments on the conference, we'll talk a little bit about elections coming up. As you know, I am wrapping up my season for the position of president, and Bob will be taking that over with a little bit of assistance, as he has some things coming, some events coming up right around the time that that transition happens. He's got a little one on the way, so we'll do our best to give him a hand in that transition. But we also have 2 other positions to fill as well. We have, and I don't have it in front of me, it was secretary, I believe. And we also have a member at large unsupported.
Correct.
And we don't have a ton of people clamoring for these positions, but I do want to encourage people to consider helping out in these positions. They our positions are generally 2 years, and we don't. I feel like koha-US does a pretty good job of not overwhelming people in these positions. We're trying to divvy out the responsibilities well enough that it's not asking too much, and we try to hear the needs of people that are in these positions. But what we are asking for, I feel like we've done a pretty good job in handling these positions and turning over these positions, staggering them around so that we're not changing hands too often, but not asking people to fill 4 years or 8 years unless they've volunteered to do so, like some people, like John that has been with us forever. But so if you are considering it, we absolutely encourage you to throw your hat in for a nomination. I am a little bit behind on some things here, but we're trying to get a form underway so that you can fill it out if you're interested in. I'll have an announcement out this week, or actually no, Bob, you have a form already?
Yeah, I just posted it in the chat.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate that. So yeah, if you're interested, please put your name in, or if there's somebody that you think that would do well, I mean, at least talk to them before throwing them under the bus. But please encourage people to do this. Bob, could you talk a little bit about your experience with being vice president so far?
Yeah, absolutely. I started with a I'll fix the forum in a second. I just got a note that I don't have it set up so everybody can get it. So that link will be good after I finish talking. But I got involved with the board as the member supported. So I specifically took that position or ran for that position so I wouldn't get roped into doing something crazy like being vice president someday. But it was actually at the Lawrence conference, I just was inspired by being part of the conference committee and all the great work we did to just step up my involvement a little bit more and get involved, knowing that someday I would be president. So this past year has been rewarding. It's been a little bit extra work from just when you're the member at large, you attending to meetings, and I was already doing the consortia sig and the conference committee, so I wasn't doing a whole lot more than that. And vice president, there's a few more things you get involved with, you feel like you should take responsibility for, but it hasn't been overwhelming. And when you have a product like a year in which our membership has grown so much, in a year which we've just come off a successful conference, it's really, the work is really worthwhile. And it puts you in front of a lot of great people in the community. And those discussions I can bring back to my own libraries and learn things, and they benefit from it as well. So it's not just a one-way street. It goes both ways. And it's been really wonderful over the years. A lot of these people, been able to work with them, meet them in person, and have a great professional relationship with them. And so all those things are nice advantages to getting involved at a higher level with this organization. But I definitely started out just lurking in the general meetings, not saying anything. So that's a good place to start. But there are you do get more out the more you put in.
And I will add that the president and vice president are not required to lead any of the SIGs, but those positions are required to lead one of the committees. And Bob, as vice president, has been leading the development committee for this year, and I've been leading the conference, or chairing the conference committee. So those are the requirements of those positions, but anything that you do beyond that is totally volunteer. Jennifer, can you take a moment to talk about your experience as being secretary for koha-US?
I feel like sometimes I have the easiest job of anyone on the board. I do all the note taking for the minutes, post them, send out reminders, and post the video for the general meeting. and just try to pitch in where I can.
Have you felt like this has been a positive experience for you?
It really has. I was one of those people who attended a lot of the SIGs and occasionally the general meeting, but wasn't terribly involved. And so it's been a really good experience.
And I will add that, you know, outside of the vice president and president doing direct communications, you know, Jennifer generally is the voice for koha-US and reminders of meetings, but she's done an excellent job for us, and we've really appreciated having her with the group. And Lauren, who is our a member at Large Unsupported, who is not here as far as I can see, I will say she has done a phenomenal job being involved. She's been a true asset to the group. So whether she, you know, chooses to run again or not for that position, you know, we have a couple people that like to run for that position. But you know, if you are unsupported and want to be a voice for our unsupported community within the group, we would welcome you to join us and to run for that position. I would hate for that to, you know, fall on the shoulders of just two people, but I know that our unsupported community is a little bit smaller than the supported community, and but they deserve a voice on the board just as much as anybody. So I hope that we get a few more people that can help fill that role.
Well, if you look in the chat, you'll see I kind of nominated myself. What's important about this position is somebody has to keep reminding all the supported people, not everybody is. We're part of the community too. Unless, of course, you could find someone who's never been member at large before.
I feel like you folks being in that position not only are a voice for the unsupported community, but you've also been a huge asset for the team, because, you know, we take support for granted, I think, at some point, and it's good to hear the challenges that you guys face, but also to you know, be a huge resource for the people in the unsupported community that need to be able to ask questions that they, you know, don't necessarily have people to ask. You know, you've been down some roads that I've never been down, and so covering, you know, installations and taking care of back ends in ways that we don't is hugely important. And I know John has been down that road too, and he has some experience in that, and so he's been able to help in that arena as well. But there aren't a lot of people that I know of off the top of my head that can fill those shoes, and so I want to thank you guys for helping in that area.
Also serves as a reminder, you know, Bywater people are wonderful, charming. Let me go get a trowel before you leave, Nate. But it's not an option for everyone.
All right. And you know, I'll just cap this off by saying, you know, being part of a board, I will say has, you know, being part of a board and being part of conference presentations both have contributed to my confidence level in the Koha community, but also just in support here locally for our consortium. And it has been a huge asset to folks here at our library, me being involved with this group. I've enjoyed it, but it also looks good on resumes. It looks good on your accomplishments over the years. You know, your board, your employers will look at this as as a huge asset and see that you are taking steps in leadership. So I encourage you, if that's something that you want to challenge yourself in, something that you would like to improve on, this is a good arena for that. So, we're a very forgiving group. I mean, if you can put up with me for 2 separate terms, I'm sure that, you'll do well. Everybody will do well in this, because I'm by no means an expert at being a leader, and particularly a president. And you guys given me a couple chances to do that.
I would just like to point out that 2/3 of the people in this Zoom meeting have been on the board or are on the board currently. So I think he's specifically addressing Emily, Nick, Eli, Avery, and Chanel.
And the people watching the recording. So
yes, that's true. There are a lot of people watching this recording. So
all right. Anybody have anything to add before we move on? Okay, then we will move on. We are going to open up the floor for general conversation about bugs and issues that you're facing in the Koha arena. If anybody has anything that they'd like to talk about, feel free to throw their hat in the ring.
I should say that the forum, if you had any issues accessing that, was requiring a sign on. I think I've got that fixed.
Thank you.
So Frank can officially nominate himself.
Nope, still saying I need permission. But I don't think I'm logged into my Google account, because I hardly ever do.
I was able to get that in a private window after I refreshed it to work.
So I just stuck a bug in the chat box. This is something we talked about at a meeting I was at yesterday, or maybe it was Monday. Jason was there too. I don't remember what meeting it was.
Yesterday.
I just remember I was there. But we talked about some notice issues and template toolkit issues. One of the things that is not currently available in template toolkit in the notices is patron borrower extended attributes. And so this is a bug that is suggesting that would be a good idea to add that to the notices capability to pull those borrower extended attributes into the notices. This is one of the things I was thinking about. This is one of the bugs that I meant to that was on that blank slide that was part of Christopher's and my presentation, where I said that, I would have a slide with other bugs related to template toolkit, and then it was a blank slide because we were working off the wrong set of slides. So this is one of the bugs that was on there.
I get, and I did a +1 on this. I get how that could be useful, but does anybody have any specific examples of how or why this would be helpful?
If there was an attribute where like if you had a patron attribute that where it made it so that you did not want them to receive a notice, a specific notice, like maybe they want to get these 3 notices but not that one, and that one can't be turned off. If there's a notice that can't normally be turned off, you could actually say, based on this patron attribute, send them. If the patron attribute is A, then send an empty notice, and an empty notice in template toolkit is a notice that doesn't get sent. Another use case, there was somebody at the conference, the international conference, said that they would like to be able to control the language of the notices outside of the language controls in Koha. So you could create a patron extended attribute that said send the notices in Esperanto. And then if they have that drop down, that attribute set to Esperanto, then their notices could be, you could create a whole separate notice that said if attribute equals Esperanto, then send them this notice. If attribute is not Esperanto, then send the normal notice. You know, there's use cases like that. There are sometimes when that information is just something like in the welcome notice, when a patron first gets their account, if you wanted to say these are the things that we have set up on your account, currently you can't put that information in there if it's an extended attribute. So there are several cases where I think it would be useful.
As a side note, and I think that one of the main, well, sort of a side note, one of the main things that I think that you've kind of pointed out is like you can't turn off any notifications for a specific person for overdue notices. So I can see how that could be useful, or at least if you can. Here's an odd thing that I see in Koha. We have a newer preference where we can specify the primary way patron wants to be notified, but it is not linked to the notification preferences. So it's kind of separate. You can indicate how they would prefer to be, well, not notified, but communicated with, I guess. But then their individual methods or formats of notification are completely separate from that.
Right, it's the primary contact method is what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, and
it'd be nice if changing that drop down actually did something other than just leaving that information on the account. Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah, I mean it's a good indicator, and like I said, it's fairly new. I think it's only been out for a few versions, if that. But yeah, there is no linkage. It would be nice if if you said I wanted my primary email or my secondary email, it would actually go to that specific address if a notice was being emailed, and then if it tied into those selections rather than you having that separate.
Well, here's another one. I did discuss this one at the conference, 15279, which was, depreciate the bespoke syntax for notices and slips. And my comment there is can we at least can we get better documentation before we get rid of the thing that we have at least some half-assed documentation for.
Agreed.
So I thought I'd point that out.
I think, too, on that documentation, the documentation that is out there is kind of spread out. We need to have more of a single focal point for the documentation on template toolkit and notifications rather than, having these separate documents, in my opinion.
Yes, currently the documentation for notices and slips, there's a little bit in the actual official Koha documentation, but then most of the documentation is in the wiki, and there are a few examples in the wiki, and the template toolkit stuff is barely touched on in the official documentation, and there is a little bit in the wiki, but again, it's spread out. And the Koha community, I think it's a while before the next meeting is scheduled, but I think I've been thinking about at the next time that roles are assigned and there's voting on roles, I might propose myself as one of the wiki curators so that I have more of a free hand in going in and completely screwing up the wiki.
I think, you know, a good first step for that may be just to decide, okay, let's merge these wikis into something.
Merge the pages into something more sensible. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good first step, and then, you know, expand on the sections, you know, template toolkit and notifications and how those all work. But I think they need to be combined. That would be the first place to start, I think.
Yeah.
If I could go back to the turning off overdue notices for a single patron. This is probably blindingly obvious to everyone else, but would that item due, does that mean overdue and long overdue fall under that category for messaging? Under modified patron messaging preferences, if you turn off, you know, item due, check in, check out, hold filled, hold reminder.
So are you looking at a specific place in Koha right now?
Yes, let me share my screen.
That'd be awesome.
Either I know something nobody else knows, or I'm completely confused.
Ah,
And details.
So item due is specifically when the item becomes due. It's not overdue. So the overdue notices actually generate beyond that.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't
Yeah.
sure if they were separate.
The way that these break out on, I'm pulling up notices and slips, the notices and slips tool right now. So the one you had on the screen there, if you could pull that back up, Fred, I can talk about each one of them. So that first item due notice is, if you go to the notices and slips tools, that's the notice with the code due, D-U-E. If you have email and digests only clicked, then it becomes due digest, D-U-E-D-G-S-T. And then advanced notice is the one that in the code for that is pre-due. And if you have the email checkboxed and the digest only checkbox, then it becomes pre-due digest. Hold filled is just the notice with the code hold. Check-in, I think is
When you check in, it
is
blows
check-in.
go out. Yeah.
The code for that one is check-in, C-H-E-C-K-I-N.
Yeah.
And then checkout is just checkout. But then there's a second one called check-in slip that's different. And hold reminder is the code for that one is hold_reminder. But then there are a whole bunch of other notices, like all of the overdue notices are configured. You can create them in the notices and slips tool, but then you have to assign them to a specific notice with the overdue notice and status triggers. And the advantage of that is that you're not stuck with one specific possible template from the overdue, from the other tool, from the notices and slips tool. You can give those any codes and any titles you want.
Right.
And you can create as many as you want. You can create a separate notice, overdue notice, for each patron category. Or for each library, which I had one of my predecessors did.
The drawbacks to the overdue notices, though, is it's not granular down to the patron. You can't decide in the patron what format they're going to receive, and so it throws in some logic hurdles that you have to use template toolkit for to so that you're not throwing all of the formats available at them. So if you want to make them, the different formats available to those that need it in a certain format, you've got to throw some logic in your slips or your notices in order to streamline that a little bit better, so that they're not being notified. If you've got 4 different formats available, you're not throwing it at them 4 different ways.
There's a use case right there for putting the borrower extended attributes into the template toolkit.
Yeah.
Notices.
Yeah, and I haven't researched this carefully, but when my system sends out an item due reminder, but a day or 2 later, it will send out again, but with everything blank. And as far as I can tell, it's using the exact same template. Anyone else had that problem and found an easy solution?
Are you using
Unique to
auto
me.
renewal?
We generally don't do that, but we just send out an item due notice. The one that I just discovered does not include overdues under its umbrella, which makes sense.
My suspicion would be that one of them is the pre-due notice and the other one is the due. And one of them just is configured blank with no data. But I would have to dig around in your Koha, and that's a scary thought right there.
Yes.
There is a way, if somebody does have something overdue, there is a print overdues on the patron record. Under the print drop down, there will be a print overdues that uses a separate overdue notice that you have to configure. So there's lots of different places to configure these in Koha, and
yes. Yeah, I need to look into what's going on and get properly confused before I send it to the list.
So I started playing with Lucas's cool page to print overdue notices, and then I ran into that same issue you mentioned, George, where we decided that every library needs their 3 templates for overdues, and it's just kind of put a whole stop on that. So I'm gonna use that as an excuse to clean up my notices templates so that we're using like 3 notices at every library.
At one point, each library had 9 separate possible overdue notices, and they were all customized for all 50 locations. And it just and then what I did is I ended up running a report that said which of these are identical. And then once I found the ones that were all absolutely word for word identical, I deleted all the ones that were identical and just merged them into one overdue notice, because the way that the overdue notices roll out is that at first it's going to look to see if there is a specific overdue notice for this library, and then if there isn't, then it falls back onto the all libraries. And so we had a situation early on when I started here where there weren't any all library notices. They were all bespoke for each individual branch. And so that was a big cleanup. That was a pandemic cleanup. There was a lot of time that I had during the pandemic to clean that up because nobody was getting overdue notices at the time. So
one of the things that we've run into with notices is that with patrons borrowing items from different branches, if they've got an overdue that's owned at another library, sometimes if that library where their home library had its own specific overdue notice, it wouldn't list the items that were overdue from the other libraries. And so we've basically had to go in and start changing all of the individual libraries to an all libraries instead of specific libraries. It took about a year for Bywater and me to figure out exactly what was going on there, but it's the notices can be kind of tricky.
On another topic, I threw out another bug. This one's rather old. You can see by the 4-digit ID number that's on it. But it was a recent conversation, and we found that it was a duplicate, but we'd welcome some feedback on this, but it would be nice to be able to have some options for favorites in Koha, particularly with reports. Right now you can categorize reports, which is really nice, but if you're using reports on a regular basis and there are certain reports that you like to use, it's not practical to have a tab for just your reports. So it would be beneficial if Koha could track those, which means that it would probably have to add a table to track that. And I could see something like that down the road, that, you know, not only could you track favorite reports, but maybe favorite lists and so forth, that this table could track. There was discussion in the bug about using cookies to do this, and I thought, no, that's kind of gross. It's a horrible way to track favorites, because it means you have to establish those favorites at each computer that you use, which doesn't make sense. You want to be able to have favorites follow you, so a table seems like it would be preferable to track this stuff, but we sure welcome some comments, feedback on this particular topic.
I use a hashtag in the notes on the reports.
Yeah, and that is certainly a way to do that, but you know, unless you keep track of what that hashtag is, or you know, you're gonna fill up the notes with those, especially if you have a lot of people trying to track their favorite reports.
Oh, I don't tell anybody else to do it. I just do it myself.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, they're an exclusive feature by George.
I use the HTML, the jQuery that I use to make the notes include, to make the report notes render in HTML. I usually put a hidden paragraph in there, and I put the hashtags in there so nobody can see them but me, and nobody knows them but me. So. It wouldn't really work for us to ask for other people, because I'm the only one that has the ability. Well, there are other people at the Nichols office that have the ability to write reports and edit reports, but none of the library staff do, and none of the people here write their own reports, because they just come to me and they say, do we have a report that does this? And 9 times out of 10, I say, yeah, we already have that.
All right, we're down to the last minute of our meeting. Anybody have anything else they'd like to throw in before we wrap up?
I am correcting. I was editing the wrong form when I was trying to fix it earlier. So then I gave out the form for the site proposal, which is also a good link for everybody to have, but I am putting in the chat the correct information.
All right. With that said, we are at the end of our hour, and we are going to go ahead and wrap this up for this month. Thank you for everybody that has joined us. We are going to leave this link, this Zoom meeting open for our conference committee that is coming up in just a minute. I'm going to give us a 5-minute break, so we will reconvene at 35 past the hour for the conference committee. So if you're here for that, please stick around. We'll be back in just a few minutes. And we will stop the recording. Thank you.